The harsh, artificial glare of fluorescent lights bleached all color from the world. It was Monday. Again. Alex sat hunched in his cubicle, a tiny gray box in a sea of identical gray boxes. His world had shrunk to the 19-inch monitor in front of him, the rhythmic clatter of his own keyboard, and the sterile click of his mouse. Each tap, each click, was a second of his life ticking away, indistinguishable from the one before it and the one to come. He stared at the spreadsheet, a grid of meaningless numbers, his reflection a pale, ghostly mask on the screen. The air was thick with the low hum of computers and the scent of stale coffee, a sound and smell that had become the soundtrack to his slow decay. Every movement was a repeat, a loop he couldn't break. Type, click, stare, sip, sigh. The life was being systematically drained from him, one spreadsheet at a time. A flicker of movement in his peripheral vision made him jolt. He turned his head, but there was nothing there, just the endless rows of empty chairs and powered-down monitors. He shook his head, blaming fatigue. But then, it happened again. A shadow, darker than the ambient gloom, darted past the edge of his cubicle wall. He blinked, his heart starting to thrum a nervous rhythm against his ribs. He tried to focus on his work, but his concentration was shattered. A stack of files he had just organized now sat askew on the corner of his desk, a single page jutting out at an unnatural angle. He was sure he hadn't touched them. A faint sound, like a dry, sibilant whisper, slithered into his ear. Home, it seemed to say. He spun around in his chair. The office was deserted, silent save for the ever-present electronic hum. His breath hitched. It was just his mind playing tricks on him, wasn't it? The oppressive quiet was making him paranoid. But the feeling of being watched, a cold prickle on the back of his neck, refused to leave. Hours bled into one another until the world outside his window was an inky black void. He was the last one left, a solitary prisoner in the cavernous, darkened office. The fluorescent lights directly above his desk cast long, distorted shadows that danced and writhed just beyond the pool of light. He stood up, stretching his aching back, and that's when he saw it. At the far end of the central hallway, a figure stood silhouetted against the faint emergency lighting. It was tall, impossibly thin, and utterly black, a void in the shape of a man. It didn't move, it just was. A primal fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Alex. He froze for a second, then turned and ran. He bolted through the labyrinthine maze of cubicles, a desperate flight through his own personal hell. The sound of his frantic footsteps echoed unnaturally in the silence, answered by a soft, dragging sound from behind him, getting closer. He burst through the main glass doors, the sudden shock of cold, rainy air a violent slap to his senses. He didn't stop. He sprinted down the slick, empty street, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead and soaking his shirt. He finally skidded to a halt, leaning heavily against the brick wall of a closed shop, his lungs burning, his body trembling with adrenaline and terror. He gasped for air, the rain washing over his face, believing, hoping, he was finally safe. He risked a glance at his own reflection in the dark storefront window beside him. His image was pale and terrified, rain streaming down the glass like tears. And standing directly behind his reflection, its form solid and inescapable, was the shadow figure. The city lights didn't touch it. It was a piece of the office, of the endless Monday, that had followed him out.